I'm here now. I'm doing the best I can. Where are you now? It's your dreams come true. Here we go. Sparky. Sparky.
So it seems you want to properly learn Tekken, so maybe you can get a better grasp from the game. Maybe you want to move away from random mashing and actually know what you're doing for once. Well, you came to the right place. In this video, I'll be touching the various basics of the game and I'll be giving some tips on how to choose and learn a character. So without further ado, let's start with
They call history the heartbeat, gonna beat faster. Shout, 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 son.
For this video, I'll be using the standard setup on a PS4 controller, but I will show this diagram to represent the appropriate buttons whenever it's necessary. Tekken is what you would call a 4-button fighter, which means that it uses exactly 4 buttons for its attacks. Each button in the game corresponds to a limb of your character, wherein an attack is usually tied to. Usually. Square is for left punch, triangle for right punch, X for left kick, circle for right kick. But for simplicity's sake, they are labeled as 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively by the online community. The buttons can be pressed together sometimes to do some moves, and these moves are notified by adding a plus between them. 1 plus 2, 2 plus 3, or 1 plus 2 plus 4 are just some examples. You'll also see moves listed with square brackets around the buttons. This means to simply hit the buttons one after the other like a piano. The movement notations are all denoted by letters shown on the screen. Keep in mind that your forward and back inputs are reversed laterally when your character faces the other side, so watch out for that. The arrows also have some significance. White arrows mean you have to tap the buttons, black arrows mean you have to hold the direction, and star inputs means you have to let go of the direction button, and if you're using a stick of any kinds, you let it go to the neutral position. Just like any other fighting game, your basic movement is dictated by your opponent's position. You walk forward by holding the direction towards your opponent, and you walk backwards by holding the direction away. Basic stuff, right? You can also dash forward by double tapping forward to close distance faster, and dash backwards by double tapping back to be more evasive to some attacks. Since Tekken is a 3D fighter, which is quite uncommon nowadays, most beginners forget that the Z-axis exists at all. To move in the foreground, you tap down. To move in the background, you tap up. This is called a sidestep, and it's another good way to dodge some attacks, but the direction of sidestepping varies for certain moves and characters. This, as well as other defense mechanics, will be touched more later in the defense sections of the video. You can also do a sidewalk by double tapping up or down and holding the corresponding button. Your character will continue moving until you let go of that button. Blocking is very similar to other fighters. You can block by holding back to stand block, or down back to crouch block. The type of blocking is important to guard against specific kinds of attacks. In Tekken, there are 3 types of moves: highs, mids, and lows. Highs can be blocked with standing block, and they whiff on crouching opponents. Lows must be blocked with crouching block, but you can also jump over them. I don't recommend ever doing that, as it leaves you open to get hit, since there's no way to defend yourself in the air, usually. Mids can only be blocked with standing block, and they will always hit on crouching block, similar to an overhead in other fighting games. However, there exists a unique kind of mid that can be blocked crouching, and these are called special mids. Special mids are mid moves that can be blocked high or low, and you can easily see which is which by the green attack circle in training mode. Next is unblockables, which is exactly how it sounds. These moves can't be blocked whatsoever, and they deal a ton of damage. They are very slow and reactable, as when a character is using an unblockable, they usually emit a glowing particle effect. You can know if a move can be blocked if the attack circle has an exclamation point in training mode. It is possible to perform a universal low parry by holding down forward right during the animation of an opponent's low attack. Doing this puts your opponent in a bound state where you can combo off of it for free. Attacks have different properties in Tekken, but the main ones are these three: homing, screw attack, and power crush. These moves have these symbols next to them in the command list to denote them easily. Homing moves are attacks that hit opponents even if they are sidestepping to either direction. They have these white sparks as a trail when they are used. Screw attacks, when used on a neutral opponent, will send them in a tailspin motion. But when used on an airborne opponent, it will send them flying, landing on their back with their feet up, allowing for the extension of combos. However, there can only be one screw attack per combo, as if you were to do another one again, it would just result in a knockdown. Power crush moves are just armor attacks. They can't be interrupted mid-animation, unlike other moves. Instead, it will absorb every hit until it connects. Fortunately, you can still break a power crush by using throws or lows. Reminder that you still take damage during power crush, so it is possible to be KO'd when using one. These moves surround the user with a white aura. Along with these three types, there are other types of moves such as throws. Throws are unblockable moves. Every character in the game can do 2 generic throws with either 1+3, which will always keep the side you're on, or 2+4, which will always switch sides with your opponent. You can choose to extend the range of your generic throws at the cost of a slower startup by doing forward plus either throw input. Every character also has command throws, which have their own diverse and unique inputs. I'm sure you're wondering, how do you defend against throws since they can't be blocked? Well, you could simply crouch to avoid them. But let's say you were unlucky enough to get caught. You can still break throws by either pressing 1, 2, or 1+2. To know which buttons to press, you can simply look at what hand is guiding the throw. There are some characters in the game that have chain throws, where they can transition from throws to other throws via button inputs. But unlike normal throws, you can't break them based on which hand they are leading with, since there are no hands. These are notoriously difficult to get out of, and the usual strategy is to mash either 1, 2, or 1 plus 2, but if you want to know what to exactly do, I would recommend using a character-specific guide online. Once you reach under 20% health, you will enter a special state called Rage, during which you do slightly more damage and you get access to 2 once per round moves, Rage Drives and Rage Arts. When these moves are used, they take away your rage state. Rage Drives are powered up versions of regular moves, which usually offer different ways to extend, start, or even end combos for each character. You would be able to identify a Rage Drive by the blue aura that surrounds the user and this specific sound effect. They are basically Tekken's equivalent to EX moves in other fighting games. Rage Arts are big cinematic moves, which is basically the super move of the character. Unlike Rage Drives though, they have the Power Crush property, however, it cannot be interrupted by lows nor by grabs. Usually they have a lot of recovery on block to compensate for their fast startup, but you can still be killed when using a Rage Art. This game has several different positions your character can enter based on different scenarios. These are your generic stances. There are 5 in total, not counting your standing state, and they allow you to use some specific situational moves. First, you have your jumping moves. Those are different from your up attacks, where you have to hold an input first instead of tapping it. You gain access to your jump attacks by pressing any attack button while jumping. Then you have your crouch state, or full crouch state as the game calls it. If you hold down, you will enter your crouch and will be able to use all your crouching moves as well as the crouch jab by inputting the correct button. From your crouching state, if you let go the down input, you will briefly enter your while standing state. While standing is the short transition period from your full crouch to your standing state. In the command list, these moves are called while rising, which is technically true, but the abbreviation WR is used on while running. So to avoid confusion, they are called while standing, or WS for short. Speaking of while running, if you double tap forward, you will perform a forward dash. You knew that already. I know this will sound stupid, but bear with me here. If you hold the forward input while your character has run 3 or more steps and hit the button you want, you will do your character's while running moves. Bet you didn't think steps matter now, did ya? While running moves are denoted by 3 white arrows in the command list, meaning that yes, it is possible to do them without a running start, which would be called an instant while running attack, but it is generally very difficult to do. Even I can't do that. If you run for 3 steps but less than 4, you will perform a tackle automatically, which will let you press 1 or 2 to break your opponent's face. Your tackle victim then needs to guess what button you're pressing to break out of it. If you run 3 steps and press 4, you will do a slide kick that switches sides and puts you on the grounded state. If you run the max number of steps, however, you will perform a shoulder tackle, which has the Power Crush property. Finally, you have your grounded state. When you get knocked down and your character's feet touch the ground, not like in screw attack, reminder. You can mash a punch or kick button to perform a tech roll where you'll gain some invincibility. A punch button will let you roll to the background, a kick button will let you roll to the foreground, regardless of which side you're on. There's also a quick recovery, which can only be done when landing in face-up feet towards, and involves the pressing or holding of a forward input when landing. This stack also has a hitbox, but it's a very high risk, low reward maneuver, so I don't recommend using it that often. Looks like you missed the tech and you're lying on the ground, and unlike in other fighting games, you can be dishonorable and literally kick the opponent when they're down. The grounded state is the most complex generic stance of all, since it has 4 different stop stances in its own, which are face up feet towards, which is the most common one, face up feet away, face down feet towards, or face down feet away. The main difference between them is that it changes the startup of some of your get up attacks. Speaking of them, if you press 4, you do a mid kick, which knocks down on counter hit. Press 3, you do a low kick, which launches on counter hit, which is a good way to start combos. 3 plus 4 and you will do a spring kick, which is not a good idea, since it's a quite unsafe move if blocked. Down 3 or 4 when a face up feet towards is even worse. You do a toe kick and roll back, which makes you safe, but only on hit. Meaning that if it is blocked, you don't do the roll and you're stuck in a long recovery animation where you can be punished easily. If you don't want to attack, you can just tap up to stand straight up, hold back to stand back, hold down back to stand up in a crouch, press 1 to roll to the background, or down 1 to roll to the foreground. And finally, tap forward, your character will do a roll, during which, if you press 1 plus 2, you will do a safe on block, flying cross chop. Most characters can change their fighting stance, allowing them to access other moves only usable in the specific stance. These stances are generally divided into 2 types, but since I couldn't find official terms, I'm just gonna call them passive stance and active stances. Active stances are when a character swaps into another stance for an indefinite amount of time, while a passive stance only puts the character in set stance for a short period of time until an attack button is pressed. Stance moves are usually very strong. When a character enters a stance, their movesets become shorter and they lose access to some of their other tools. Blocking is very easy to do, but it's usually not that rewarding. So a good way to get good rewards is to dodge attacks instead. The best ways to do that is to either crouch, sidestep, or backdash. Evading moves is usually more rewarding than blocking them, and this is because when a move doesn't hit anything, the character throwing it is stuck in their recovery animation until they go back to their neutral state, which means that you have more time to hit them back for a big punish. Crouching is very easy to do. You simply hold down. It's good to crouch under laggy highs or high strings for safe and easy punishes, especially if your character has while standing attacks that can be used to counter. Reminder that you can still be hit by lows if you're not blocking, and mids, so you should watch out for strings that incorporate them. Sidestepping allows you to dodge linear moves. It's advised to sidestep if your opponent likes to use them a lot, but the direction of it matters based on which characters you're facing. Every character in Tekken has a weak side where the best moves just don't hit anything. Sidestep direction is not just whether you sidestep into the foreground or background. When you sidestep, the direction is based on the player 1 side, where the foreground is sidestep right and the background is sidestep left. On the player 2 side, these directions are reversed. Again, I recommend looking up a guide for every character's weak side to know which direction you should be sidestepping when fighting a specific character. When you backdash, you can dodge most moves, but sometimes you'll be out of range to use some of your best moves to counter. Unlike other fighting games, however, you can still block when backdashing if you're holding back, which will cancel the animation, allowing you to do another backdash in rapid succession. This brings us to an advanced type of backdash, which has been plaguing beginners since Tekken 3. You see, when you input a backdash in Tekken, you can interrupt the animation with almost any move, except with another backdash input. So you can only backdash at this fixed speed, no matter how fast you spam the input. But if you were to cancel the backdash with a down back input, release it, which gives you an extra back input, and quickly tap back, you will have done a Korean backdash. Now, nobody expects you to master this on your first try, since this is an advanced skill, but if you want an easier method, you could just do a back, then do core circle motion back, then tap back quickly. However, this won't work on all characters, since some of them have sway stances that use the core circle back motion. Frame data sounds very scary for beginners, since it sounds like you're studying for a math test, having to learn so many numbers, which is the case. However, frame data is much simpler than what people think it is. Every move in every fighting game are divided into 3 portions: the startup, active, and recovery frames. Having more startup or recovery frames means that the move starts slower or ends slower respectively. In Tekken, your fastest move will always be the one jab. At 10 frames, there are no moves that are faster unless when you hit someone, you usually gain something called frame advantage or disadvantage. Let's take the one jab as an example here. If you hit someone with a one jab and your opponent does it too at the same time, you will both hit each other and do what's called a trade. If they block you, you will gain frame advantage of 1 frame plus 1, meaning that your next move will come out 1 frame faster. So, if your opponent were to do the one jab right after blocking yours, they will get hit. This is reversed for moves that put you at frame disadvantage or minus. Being minus is not always bad, however. If a move is minus between 1 and 9 frames, you will still have the opportunity to block. But if you're minus 10 or above, you can be punished, but the severity of the punish is based on how minus you are. The more minus you are, the more rewarding the punish. To know which move to be used for the appropriate time, I recommend, again, using a good online guide or pay $4 to get access to in-game frame data. If you hit someone who is attacking with a faster move before theirs connects, you will get something called a counter hit. Counter hits essentially give your moves some new properties and a little bit more damage, so they are usually very rewarding. You will know when you get a counter hit by the message or this amazing sound effect. Now, you know how to counter hit, but what the hell is this? The attack seems to be connecting with your opponent, but your opponent is phasing right through it. This is a weird mechanic called the crush system. Some moves in Tekken have the property to be invincible to certain types of attacks, highs or lows only. They basically crush these moves. The most notable crush move is the hop kick, which is immune to lows, therefore it's a low crush move. This is very different from moves that are evasive. Evasive moves can still be hit by moves that hit a specific spot, while crush moves just phase through them. Once you launch your opponent, you'll finally get the chance to do a combo. Combos in Tekken, unlike other fighting games, do not rely on cancels at all, most of the times, and on juggles instead. Juggles have a pretty straightforward structure and two obvious goals: to maximize your damage, to maximize your wall carry. After a launcher, you then proceed with some combo filler, then a screw attack, then usually a dash, then a pickup as I like to call them, and finally an ender. If you successfully carried someone to a wall, you may have done something called a wall splat. Basically, when someone is wall splat, they are in a short stun state, and when they're hit in that state, they take extra damage. If a stage has breakable walls or a balcony, you can break them by hitting someone in the wall splat state with a strong enough move. This can be used to extend combos to even more ridiculous heights. A floor break can also occur if you use a move that knocks someone airborne, straight down, which can also extend some combos. Okay, this is gonna sound boring, but the best way to choose a character in Tekken is to simply pick someone you like. I know this sounds crazy, but this is generally a very good way to find a main. The only barrier stopping you from learning a character completely is your own motivation to grasp the more complex mechanics they provide. But if you really want to play someone easy, I recommend choosing from either Kazumi, Shaheen, Claudio, Paul, or Law, based on your preferred playstyle. But most characters in Tekken are relatively easy to learn. Few have high execution barriers or even strange gimmicks. Since in Tekken there are so many moves, it is incredibly difficult to remember all of them, especially when only a few of them are of any use. The useful moves are once again all known by analyzing the frame data, which has already been done by a bunch of cool people online, so I recommend looking up a guide on the internet to know which moves are your key moves, which are moves that allow for the character's playstyle. Pokes. Pokes are fast and safe moves or strings that slowly chip away at your opponent's health. Punishers. Moves that can be used to counter opponents based on how minus they are. And finally, a few bread and butter combos to complement those punishers. I hope this guide was effective, and if you did enjoy the video, I recommend liking it and subscribing to the channel to show support. I know it's weird for this kind of video to be my second ever one, but I generally wanted to make it since a long time ago. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you at some other time.